This is the In Focus podcast from The Hindu.
Hello and welcome to another episode of the In Focus podcast. I'm your host G. Sampath. In a setback to the opposition India alliance in Delhi, which is basically the alliance between the Congress and the Aam Aadmi Party, Delhi Pradesh Congress Committee President Arvinder Singh has resigned from his post, and one of the reasons he has cited is his party's alliance with AAP. Lovely's resignation letter has put the spotlight on what is widely recognized as a big contradiction, an alliance between the Congress party and a party that came into being to combat the kind of political decadence that the Congress party allegedly represented. In fact, AAP leader Arvind Kejriwal has spent much of the last 10 years targeting the Congress more than any other party. And in turn, the Delhi state leadership of the Congress has spent most of its energies targeting the Aam Aadmi Party. Furthermore, it is the Congress that's the original complainant in the alleged liquor scam case that has landed Kejriwal in jail. So how does this alliance square with the credo of the Aam Aadmi Party? How can AAP explain this alliance to its supporters? And given that the two parties have suddenly found quote-unquote anti-BJPism to be a bigger factor than corruption, does this alliance indicate that the founders of AAP, several of whom are currently in jail on corruption charges, were fundamentally wrong in their understanding of political corruption? These are interesting questions, and we have with us someone who is ideally placed to answer them, Supreme Court Advocate Mr. Prashant Bhushan. Mr. Bhushan, welcome to In Focus and thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you, Mr. Sampath.
Sir, to start with, I was just wondering, Arvinder Singh Lovely's resignation letter, has really brought this into focus, the contradictions of the AAP-Congress alliance. Do you think the anti-BJPism, which seems to be the uniting factor, the glue for them, for this alliance, has become a bigger factor for AAP than the anti-corruption platform that sort of led to its very existence in the first place?
The Aam Aadmi Party unfortunately has abandoned its anti-corruption plan, and it has abandoned the basic founding principles of the party, which was that it would be an alternative political party which would be transparent, democratic, accountable, and of course, it would stick to its anti-corruption plank. It would make policies in public interest, etc. Unfortunately, Aam Aadmi Party, after a short while, degenerated into a normal political party, whose main objective was to somehow come to power and remain in power. The other problem is that while many political parties are like that, but at least some political parties have some ideology. So, for example, the BJP does have an ideology, which is a kind of Hindutva, Hindu Rashtra kind of ideology. May not have many other ideologies, but certainly has that. It is also opposed to socialistic principles. It also has an ideology which is kind of Manusmriti kind of ideology of pro-Brahmanism, etc. The Congress also has an ideology, that is, it has an ideology of being secular, it has an ideology of being kind of socialist, and so on. Between all this, of course, both Congress and the BJP have been corrupt. The BJP has also been opposed to all the principles, the foundational principles of the Constitution, etc. Now, Aam Aadmi Party, unfortunately, did not develop any ideology of its own at all, and it basically follows an opportunistic ideology of just trying to remain in power. Now, today, because it sees the BJP as trying to finish the Aam Aadmi Party and using all kinds of unfair methods to finish the party, not just the party, to finish democracy also. Therefore, the Aam Aadmi Party is fighting the BJP, but otherwise, in terms of ideology, the Aam Aadmi Party doesn't have that secular ideology that the BJP, that the Congress has. It just has an opportunistic ideology of doing whatever it takes to remain in power.
Right. So you're saying that the AAP's move to ally with the Congress is driven by opportunism. So would you then say that the anti-BJPism of the Congress is different from the anti-BJPism of the AAP? Because we know that Congress, at least in the initial days until this and right up till this alliance, it has always labeled the Aam Aadmi Party as a B team of the BJP. And you yourself have said that the Aam Aadmi Party does not have secularism as part of its DNA, so to speak. And you have also said, in fact, in an interview to me earlier, that you did not realize until much later, you were part of the IAC movement, you did not realize until much later about the presence of RSS elements in the anti-corruption movement that led to the Aam Aadmi Party. So would you differentiate the anti-BJPism of the Congress, which seems to be driven by some kind of an ideological difference, with the anti-BJPism of AAP, which seems to be driven by opportunism alone?
Yes, I think there is a difference. The Congress at least has a secular ideology. It is basically democratic. It is basically socialist also in its economic outlook. Although to a very large extent the economic policies pursued during Chidambaram's time as finance minister were not really socialist, but by and large the Congress has been socialistic, or rather has a socialist economic ideology. It is of course secular, and it is also to a very large extent committed to democratic principles, even though it may not be so democratic in the running of the party, but as a ideology, it is committed to that. Now, Aam Aadmi Party today does realize that the BJP is a great threat not only to the Aam Aadmi Party, but it is a threat to democracy in general in this country. And therefore, in order to fight a larger evil, it has allied itself with the Congress, even though unfortunately, because it sees the Congress as its main rival, not only here in Delhi, but also in Punjab. Therefore, the party workers are finding it difficult to ally in heart or campaign together with the Congress party.
Right. So, would you then suggest that, I mean, we know that with regard to the Congress's socialist credentials, you made a very good point about the kind of policies they followed when, say, Mr. Chidambaram was in charge of the finance ministry, etc. But this manifesto, I mean, there is no, it's like without any apologies, it's got a socialist redistributive kind of a bent to it. So they're explicit about it, but we don't see anything of that kind. With AAP, even though Aam Aadmi Party has in its civic and municipal initiatives in Delhi, especially with regard to electricity and water, so on, it has made kind of redistributive kind of moves, wouldn't you say? So there is, without any explicit embrace of any kind of socialist credentials or credo, the Aam Aadmi Party has been empathetic towards the lower economic strata in Delhi, wouldn't you say?
Yes, because it finds it expedient to get votes, but it will do whatever it finds expedient to get votes. While I feel that the Congress manifesto is to at least a substantial extent driven by its ideological, economic principles. But so far as Aam Aadmi Party is concerned, it finds it expedient to get votes in this manner by adopting these kind of somewhat socialist, populist policies of free electricity, free water, and free ride on buses for women, etc. So to that extent, yes, the Aam Aadmi Party is following, though for non-ideological reasons, for purely vote bank considerations, it is following, at least to some extent, socialist principles in its policies.
Right, socialist kind of policies, but from politics of expediency rather than driven by principles. And that's again a distinction you're making. Mr. Bhushan, as you have been one of the founding members of the Aam Aadmi Party, and you've been over the last 10 years a close witness to the history of the party, the evolution of this entire political phenomenon that began as an anti-corruption movement with the IAC. Then it became a vehicle of sort of civic-oriented anti-politics, and they've always sort of set themselves up against the political establishment. We don't want to do conventional politics. That's how they came into existence. So then they became a conventional political party, as you already pointed out, and today they have become a party that has joined hands with the very quote-unquote epitome of political corruption that it says it was founded to combat. So in hindsight, as one of the original members, do you think this alliance with the Congress puts the nail in the coffin of the foundational idea of AAP as a non-political force, quote unquote, which would take on the established parties? Or was this very idea to begin with was a misguided one? Do you think it was a misguided idea?
No, it was not a misguided idea. Actually, had Aam Aadmi Party stuck to its founding principles of being an alternative political party, wedded to transparency, democracy, and people-oriented politics, it would have by now become perhaps a very major political party in this country. Unfortunately, because it betrayed those principles and tried to just, for expediency's sake, seek votes on the basis of any opportunistic principles or any opportunistic ideology, and it abandoned its core of anti-corruption, democracy, transparency, etc. That's why it finds itself in this predicament. However, the fact that it has allied itself for the time being with the Congress party does not mean that it could not be an alternate political party. Even an alternate political party can align with any other party in order to achieve a higher objective, which is to save democracy in this country and save it from another term for the BJP, which is committed to destroying not just democracy, but which is committed to destroying all that we value in our society, all that is valued in our constitution. So therefore, aligning with the Congress in order to fight a larger evil is not against the principles of even an alternative political party.
Right. Thank you for clarifying your perspective on that, Mr. Bhushan. I mean, you don't see a contradiction in this alliance in terms of its core principles. I mean, having said that, I mean, I want to go back to what you said earlier about Aam Aadmi Party being visualized or conceptualized as an anti-corruption force, political force. Now, we know exactly the context in which the Aam Aadmi Party came into existence as an anti-corruption force, and that was the kind of finance-centric corruption. Political corruption back then meant, the various kinds of scams of that era. Some of those scams have been debunked as not scams at all. We won't go into that. But, the kind of political corruption that led to the entire India Against Corruption movement and the subsequent anti-Congress orientation of Aam Aadmi Party. With what we have witnessed since that time, over the last 10 years, we have seen Operation Lotus, we have seen electoral bonds and the enforcement directorate combination doing its magic. We have seen candidates withdrawing from elections, as we saw in Surat. So all these are different kinds of corruption, which stand in a different dimension compared to what we saw when Aam Aadmi Party came into existence. So if you could go back in time, what advice would you give to your IAC colleagues and your younger self back then in the way you conceptualize corruption?
I don't think the Aam Aadmi Party would have and should have restricted itself only to financial corruption. It would have, if it had stuck to its principles. Of course, it came up through the anti-corruption movement, which was primarily focused on financial corruption. But I have no doubt that had Aam Aadmi Party stuck to its founding principles, it would have equally taken up the issue of political corruption, which is seen in Operation Lotus or using the ED, IT and CBI twist the tail of opposition leaders or MLAs or MPs, etc. So it was supposed to be wedded not just to all kinds of corruption, but it was supposed to usher in an era of alternative politics in this country, which is a party which functions transparently, democratically, within the limits of the financial limits set out for election expenses, etc. A truly people-oriented political party, and which if in time to come, if it had come to power, should have ushered in a lot of political reforms to reduce the influence of money, power in politics, etc. And to end this kind of political corruption that we are seeing, or to do whatever one can to end this kind of political corruption that we are seeing. So, in my view, there was no contradiction in that. And the only advice that I would have given the Aam Aadmi Party would be, and which I gave it also, because we had formed 33 committees, expert committees, to discuss and finalize the policies of the party. These committees gave reports which were supposed to be discussed and adopted by our working committee, but unfortunately, before that could be done, Kejriwal said that there is no need for us to adopt any policy. We will adopt an expedient policy as and when the time comes. So that was the beginning of what led to a break between me, Yogendra Yadav, and Kejriwal, because we felt that no really people-oriented alternative political party could function without having an understanding of policy and without adopting policies of its own.
Right. So do you think that this people-oriented alternative politics is now, that's a dream that's more or less dead now? Or is a time for it?
No, I don't think. No, it's not dead. But what I do feel is that it has received a huge setback because of what Arvind Kejriwal and the Aam Aadmi Party went on to do. Because a lot of idealistic people who joined the Aam Aadmi Party or who joined the anti-corruption movement, thinking that they were being part of a larger revolution in this country, have been greatly disappointed and have gone back and sat inside. But it's not an idea which is dead. It's a timeless idea, and I think the people of this country, or at least activists and people who want something better for the future of this country, should and will come out in the time to come again for alternative politics in this country. That's what the country needs.
Right. I see your point about people-oriented alternative politics and how the Aam Aadmi Party under Kejriwal has sort of deviated substantially from those core values and principles, which also drew a lot of people to this party. But having said that, from the way we have seen the Aam Aadmi Party put up some kind of a stand against what its own supporters would see as the BJP juggernaut in Delhi, particularly in the assembly elections and so on. Don't you think it has a tremendous value, delivered a lot of value even in the way, in its current form? Also, it is in a way an alternative to the BJP, or is it not, according to you?
No, it's just it's a opportunistic alternative for the time being. It's not going to be a lasting or a real alternative to the BJP, in my view, because any party bereft of any ideology and functioning only on the basis of expediency cannot really do anything very useful in the long run.
Right. I mean, so you would say that if it needs to really evolve further into a genuine alternative, it needs to develop an ideology that goes beyond expedience. Is that what you would say?
Yes, not just ideology. It needs to think about policy, adopt policies for the party, etc., which it has not done.
Right. One last question, Mr. Bhushan. So, do you think it's possible for the Aam Aadmi Party to explain to its vote base in Delhi this alliance with the Congress? Because now this alliance is there, they have divided the seats. So, the same Congress that Aam Aadmi Party leaders have spent their lives, I mean, they're not their lives, okay, their political careers, painting as the emblem of political decadence, den of corruption. Now they're going to go and fight alongside them. Is it easy to explain, do you think, to Aam Aadmi Party supporters, okay, this
Yes,
alliance
yes.
is...
I think it should not be very difficult, because they have to just explain that they are fighting a much larger evil, and therefore they have to align with a smaller evil in order to fight a much bigger evil.
So you basically feel that this contradiction between of this alliance is not a big issue as far as this particular election is concerned.
Yes, in this election, it is not such a big issue.
Thank you so much, Mr. Bhushan. Thank you so much for your observations and insights. Pleasure talking to you.
In Focus will be back soon with analysis of the biggest news issues. In the meantime, you can find our podcast on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, and other platforms. Just search for In Focus by The Hindu. We'll see you soon.